All right, everyone. A large proportion of the world's countries signed on to the Marrakech Agreement. The United States notably didn't. I think Australia ended up not signing, Israel, which was funny to some people, and then a large swath of European states also didn't sign. And Chile, I believe, was also on the list. Chile was the only other country in this hemisphere, I think, that didn't sign, which is interesting. Good for you. The countries that did sign are crazy, run by crazy people, like your governments have totally sold you out. Again, it's that old thing. It's not just the host culture that ends up absorbing immigration that loses out in such an arrangement. Because the best and brightest from the third world will leave the third world to go, where the going's good. They'll go to the US or the UK or Japan or something, leaving their own country, one hand short at the nuclear station, so to speak. You get that situation, it's bad for both cultures. Immigration should be limited. Some people think that that's a racist statement at this point, which is hilarious because it should be limited regardless of who's trying to immigrate. It's just the economic framework of a world that actually functions economically requires those controls. They're saying that if you eliminated borders, you could generate so many more trillions of dollars, for rich bankers and corporate heads. They'd get 99% of it. Wonderful. Again, let's give corporations and banks more power. Wonderful idea. But I wanted to elaborate on something else, which is this agreement fundamentally could destroy the European Union. If you look at a list of the states that didn't sign, it's the Visegrad Group, Italy, a few other countries within Europe. There are a lot of dissenters that exist within the European Union. The problem is that when everyone else signs on and signals, we want limitless migration, it alienates these other countries. That's been the perennial issue for some of these groups within Europe. It's interesting, because if you look at the Eastern European mentality at the government level, it seems to be we should be able to move around within Europe all we want, but nobody else from outside of Europe should be part of that. The problem is the Western European governments want to extend it to other people. First it was Syrian refugees, then it was like people from Libya and other parts of North Africa, the Middle East in general, Central Asian immigration and refugee movements, specifically predicated on two things. Actual refugees fleeing war, which was unfortunately caused by those same Western states in part, as well as the U.S., our imperialistic foreign policy actually, number one. And then number two, economic migration, which is now the larger factor. The Syrian civil war has begun to die down in all respect. Now you've got people from Yemen, probably, I would assume, trying to become refugees. Like, hey, if we can make it to Riyadh or Mecca or something, maybe we can, get to Turkey, and then we can be in a camp for a while, then we walk across, basically, into Greece or something. And go through Bulgaria. Poland dissented. I think the Czech Republic, Austria. Did Switzerland end up signing or not? I can't recall if Switzerland's on those. I think Croatia decided not to. Some of the states that were holdouts, like Russia and China, ended up signing. The U.S. was like, from day one, we're not going to sign. Hungary definitely didn't sign it with Orban over there. I think it was the U.S. and Hungary at first that said they weren't going to sign. And then you had a host of, I believe, 16 other states that joined along. Again, notably Australia and Chile. But this agreement will alienate those countries that are dissenting from this kind of migration from the rest of Europe. The majority of the European states signed, in all honesty, but you've got holdouts that didn't, and what could end up happening is they say, okay, enough is enough, they trigger their own articles, they try to leave the European Union. I think if you look at what's happening with the UK right now, it's pretty clear at this point that if there's a Brexit at all, it'll probably be a hard Brexit. A no-deal Brexit, that is. Even if it's not, at this point they've been dragged through so long by the process, there's nothing but bad blood at this point, including among some of the Europhile politicians in the UK who can't, I think, understand why they're being abused so much. Hint, pro tip, it's because they want you to suffer so that your economy gets all weird and jittery so that they can try to get you to rejoin or at least dissuade other countries from leaving the European Union. It's an attempt to scare people. It's an intimidation tactic, basically. That this particular agreement is technically non-binding. You understand, the Marrakech Agreement is a non-binding sort of resolution. This is what the UN typically does. Most of the things they do have no teeth, but when you look at these governments and their willingness to sign this, they could start developing unilaterally or at the UN level their own framework for essentially an open borders style society within their cultures. Now, if you don't have the U.S. on board, the main world economy, of course, it's going to be funny. It's definitely going to hurt some of the other major economies that have signed on if that happens. It could desperately hurt the UK. And you've already got another thing. When you do this, populism inevitably rises. Again, even in places that are underdeveloped, where typically they're the donor culture, people leave the country to go elsewhere. Even there, you're going to have a rise in nativism, in nationalism in some cases. And that's what these people are worried about, supposedly. They don't seem too worried in their actions, though their words are like, oh my god, Nazis everywhere. Like, anyone to the right of Stalin to them is really out there and a far righter, but, they worry about it constantly. They see this shadow of Hitler everywhere they go. And yet they're not taking any physical, pragmatic, concrete steps to take care of that. They're not attempting to appease their own people to any degree. They simply browbeat them and say, hey, your culture is bad, or needs to be tempered, needs to bend over backwards for some other group of people. And this happens as well in Africa. You've got governments there that essentially have sold their people out to China at this point. Oh yeah, go ahead and build a bunch of factories and infrastructure that 99% of the time will only be used by the Chinese people, the managerial class that's settling here. Just give our government a cut of the proceeds. Our people, yeah, you can still enslave them. They'll be making a few pennies a day more than they made before, and for some reason this is considered a progress or something by the standards of some of these countries. I call it a new wave of colonialism. It's economic imperialism, China style, and it's unhelpful for that part of the world, which is why you have the natural reaction, the growth of populism there as well. It's already happening. These people, fundamentally, they want to be left alone right now. They're already under enough stress. Unfortunately, government's very bad at leaving things alone where they do work. They like to tinker with things meaninglessly. That's about all. Peace out.